Hey, what's up guys? Phil here from Inspire Fitness. Welcome back to the Japanese Bento box series. This is going to be part 2. We got katsu and egg sandwiches along with yakitori meatballs. If you guys want to check out the previous versions, go for part 1 or part 3, which is coming up in the future. And yeah, we're going to show you guys the macros as we go along for today's recipe. And let's get cooking up, guys. So we got a really awesome katsu and egg sandwich bento box recipe for you guys today. Let's get into it. So the ingredient list will be down in the description below, so make sure you get everything before you start this recipe. So first thing we have to do is we have to prep our ingredients. Let's start with chicken breast because this is going to take the longest to kind of cook. So most chicken breasts come really thick, so you want to make sure you cut it widthwise so that you can reduce the cook time here. So after we cut the chicken breast into 2 thin slices, we want to get like a meat mallet here, put like saran wrap over it and just pound away and make it really thin. So now that we pounded away at that chicken breast, notice that there's little tiny holes in there. That's going to really help accept the marinade, which really helps brighten the flavors of the dish. We're not using that much oil here, or we're not really using any oil at all, so we want to make sure that we get all the flavor we can. So now that the chicken breast is all seasoned, you just want to go flour, eggs, and then panko breadcrumbs because the chicken breast really goes with the flour and it really binds with the flour. The flour binds to the egg and then the egg binds with the panko breadcrumbs. So doing this method really makes sure that every piece of that chicken is coated here. So I used to focus on this thing called the dry hand, wet hand method because all the YouTube cooks kind of told me what to do or try to instruct me to do that. But I find that it's just too complicated, and it's really hard to explain in this voiceover, and I feel like I do a really bad job of it. So another method is just to put a glove on your right hand or whatever hand you want to use and just go through the flour, egg, and panko, right? Just use one hand. Make it simple for yourself. So now it's time to bake it up 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 170 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. So as the chicken bakes, let's make our katsu sauce in the meantime. We got 1 tablespoon of monk fruit sweetener. This is going to add a lot of sweetness without any added extra calories. We got 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce here. It's going to add a lot of savoriness to the dish. We got maybe like half a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. We got 3 tablespoons of sugar-free ketchup. It's going to add a lot of, nice acidity to the dish as well. Just mix that up. And you got this awesome sweet, savory, acidic dish or sauce that's going to be really complementary to the chicken. So now it's time to use your super awesome new bread cutting knife. Shout out to Jazz and Christy for getting me this. So this step is super optional. You don't really need to do this. This is what they do in Japan for their sandwiches. So, I kind of wanted to stick to tradition and kind of take off the crust. But if you like them, feel free to leave it on. So now that the bread is all prepped up, you just kind of want to shred some cabbage. My favorite method of doing this is to kind of get like a potato peeler and to kind of just shred it on the side. And what this does is it gets this really nice little tiny crunchy bits without adding too much moisture to the dish, which I feel like ruins the sandwich. So this is a really great way to just keep the texture of the cabbage without adding too much like wetness. So let's assemble the sandwich now. You just want to put the katsu sauce on the bottom layer. We used way too thin of a layer here, so make sure to go double this amount. It's pretty simple from here, guys. You just want to add the shredded cabbage that we cut up from earlier and just place it on top of the sauce. Up next comes the chicken. You can kind of trim it if you want. I didn't really care too much if the edges kind of came off. You'll kind of see what I mean as you kind of assemble the sandwich. But yeah, the edges will come off. And yeah, just cut it in half and you get this really awesome cross section of this awesome katsu sandwich. It's super low in fat, guys. And the really important part about this is that you nail that sauce. That's where all the flavor is going to be coming from. So now it's time to make our egg sandwich. So if you want a full description on how you make this sandwich, we have a full video on it on our YouTube channel. It's like way more in depth than this one. We're just gonna kind of run through this one quickly just because we already have it on our channel, which is high protein, lower fats. So the first thing we want to do here is make the egg salad mixture. We just use for this recipe 1 egg and 1 egg white to lower the fats and keep the proteins pretty high. So the next ingredient for the sauce, we just got 1 tablespoon of Japanese mayo here. Japanese mayo is a little sweeter, so it's going to add a lot more flavor. Usually the recipe calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons, but we can save a lot of fats by just adding in 1. Up next, we got maybe like half a teaspoon of garlic here. It's really pungent, so you don't want too much. And just like a little bit of salt just seasons the taste. And lastly, we got that good old-fashioned monk fruit sweetener. I love monk fruit sweetener, guys. It adds like a lot of sweetness to the dish without any calories coming from sugar. It's amazing. I really don't know how they kind of cultivate this stuff, but yeah, this dish could really benefit from some monk fruit sweetener. So now we're just going to mix it all up. It's going to turn into like this really nice creamy sauce. Like I said before, we just added 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise, whereas usually the recipe calls for maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons. So we saved up on a lot of fat for this recipe. Lastly, for the prep, all we really need to do now is cut up a cucumber. The thinner you go here, the better. Obviously, you can see that my knife skills aren't that great. I was trying to go really nice and slow here, but everything kind of came out in random little pieces, which I think is totally fine. You know, it doesn't really matter at the end, and you're going to cut this in half anyways. So, you know, just try to keep it as thin as possible. So now we got everyone's favorite, we got Japanese milk bread here. It goes so well with the egg sandwich, it's gonna be awesome. So the first tip I have for you guys is to cut off the crust before you assemble the sandwich. So if you look at my other video, I kind of did this afterwards and everything kind of fell out. I had to crush the bread too, which kind of takes away from the look and the feel of the dish, so make sure you do this beforehand. The second tip I have for you guys is use a really sharp knife, that way you can get these really nice cuts without squishing the bread. So now it's pretty simple. We just want to assemble the sandwich. You want to go cucumbers first so that it kind of stays where it is. You just want to get those eggs and you cut it in half and kind of layer it vertically in the center, and that's going to make a really nice cross section. And the mistake I made last time with this too is that I overfilled this with egg salad, and when that happened I cut into it and everything seeped out anyways. So if you want to keep the integrity of this sandwich, just maybe use 2 at max 3 tablespoons. So yeah, now just get your sharpest knife and cut directly in the center of this and just kind of watch what happens here. We kind of get the sandwich and boom, you got this beautiful cross section, awesome colors, and the perfect amount of egg salad mixture in there. So now it's time to make the yakitori meatballs. It's pretty simple from here. We're just going to be adding 1 egg. This is what's going to really help it bind together, especially with the breadcrumbs from later on. We just got maybe 1 teaspoon of salt. It's going to be enough for the entire dish. We just got 2 teaspoons, or you can use how much, whatever amount of black pepper you really like. Then we got panko breadcrumbs here. We used 1 to 2 tablespoons to start it off, but that wasn't actually enough. It was a little too wet, so we actually ended up adding maybe 3 to 4 tablespoons of panko breadcrumbs to kind of make it into those spherical shapes. So now that we put everything together, you want to kind of aim for that consistency where it's kind of like, it feels like almost like clay in your hands. It's like malleable. So what happened when we put 1 to 2 tablespoons of just panko breadcrumbs, it was really liquidy, so we couldn't form it into anything. So after 3 to 4 tablespoons, we can kind of form it into balls. So that's kind of the tell of how much panko breadcrumbs you should use. So my favorite method to make these into perfect ball shapes is to kind of just get a little bit out of my hand and just throw it within each hand, just like I'm doing here. And then just as it lands in my hand, I squeeze just a tiny bit and I just keep going until I kind of feel it in my hand and becoming a circle. So you don't want to kind of get both hands and just roll it into a circle, because if you do that, you know, that's kind of a tell that you put way too much breadcrumbs in there. So you don't want it to be tough, you want it to be nice and tender, and this is the best way to do so. So we're going to be using a minimal amount of oil here, maybe around 1 tablespoon of olive oil is totally fine. And we're just going to put all 6 balls onto the grill, and this is going to be maybe 0.5 ounces each, so try to get a scale if you can. So what we did here is that right when we kind of see a side kind of form a crust, we're going to kind of flip it over to the other side so all the sides can really form a crust here. It's going to look kind of smashed at this point, but eventually it'll turn into that spherical shape. This took maybe around 3 to 5 minutes to make in total. So now that all the meatballs are done cooking, you just want to use this kind of soy sauce and mirin mixture. It's pretty simple to make. It's just going to be 1 part soy sauce, 1 part mirin. This is a tablespoon of each, and a little bit of sugar if you kind of want a little bit more sweetness here. So just by itself, it can be a little bland. So make sure to really take care of that sauce and kind of soak everything. Make sure you roll all the balls in that sauce. And even if you want more in the future, you can just kind of dip it in as you eat. So now it's the last part, it's the fun part. We're gonna kind of decorate the dish and kind of plate everything in. We're finally done making this dish. So it's gonna look really awesome. It's really high protein and super flavorful. I think this is actually the main kind of dish out of the 3 that we have on this recipe series. So that is really it for part 2 of this series, guys. If you want to check out the other 2 dishes in this series, make sure to check out part 1 and part 3, which is going to be coming out soon. Today we had katsu sandwiches with egg sandwiches and yakitori meatballs. The other one's going to be salmon with eggs and furikake rice, and the other one is going to be kind of like this egg tamago dish with rice balls. So if you guys like this video, feel free to like the video and subscribe. If you guys try this out, please tag us on Instagram, or you can check out our website at aspirefitnesswalnut.com to see some healthy food options that you can kind of see and try to make for yourselves. And yeah, hope to see you guys in the next one.